Come Out of the Shadows is D.M. Needham's latest novella. World-famous singer Grace Fillmore catches the attention of many admirers. However, one individual will go to extreme measures to possess her. With the stalker situation intensifying, Grace's record label enlists bodyguard Dylan Roberts for her protection. As Dylan takes on the role of safeguarding Grace, she notices something she desires, but so does Dylan. Can Dylan stop the threat, or will their attraction become a distraction that jeopardizes everything? Come Out of the Shadows is available on Amazon.com. Welcome to the Better 2 podcast. I'm your host, Donna. Today's guest is Eddie Schwartz, and we're talking about his new EP, Film School. We talk about that. We talk about creativity. We talk about, well, an interesting moment in his life that deals with the song, Hit Me With Your Best Shot. So tune in. Hi, Eddie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Donna. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I look behind you and I see this most impressive. It's like there's the musical instruments, and then there's all the records. And I do know in your press kit, and Ray was sure to tell me about the fact that the first time you heard one of your songs on the radio, you almost got arrested. And I can imagine. I mean, I can imagine. You know, as a writer, the first time I held my book, it was an amazing experience. So to especially now knowing the history of this song, um, it had to be an amazing experience just to hear it. I mean, I can only imagine what it would be like to hear your song on the radio, even if you're not singing it, but you created this. So, and to be fair to you, most people, when I've mentioned this, that I had this interview coming up, they're like, I thought they wrote that. So, without further ado, why don't you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, yeah, thank you for the question, and thanks for having me on the show, Donna. Yeah, so I'm from Toronto, Canada. My father was Canadian, my mother was from Brooklyn, New York, so I had this kind of tale of two cities growing up. And I was walking up the main street in Toronto called Yonge Street, and it was the first really nice, warm day of spring. And if you've spent a winter in Canada, you know that that first warm day of spring is a very special day because people sort of shed their shells and they're almost dancing in the streets just to see the sun and feel the warmth on their faces again. So walking up Yonge Street, and a lot of the stores, it's small stores and shops, um, had their doors flung open because they just wanted to get that fresh air in after all those months of cold. And there was a famous hairstylist place right in the heart of the city. Walking up, and I can hear some music. The doors are open, as I was saying, sort of two like bar doors, and they're both open. And I'm hearing some music come out of it, and I'm going, God, that sounds interesting. I wonder what that is. And I get to the doors, and I realize I'm hearing a song I wrote called "Hit Me with Your Best Shot" for the very first time on radio, sung by Pat Benatar. And I stopped in my tracks and I turned to face these two rows of barber chairs. Every chair had a client sitting in and getting their hair cut or styled, and behind each one there was a stylist. And for the next 2.5 minutes or whatever it was, the length of the song, something like that, um, I was mesmerized. I was just standing there, pretty sure I was drooling. Um, and so the song comes to an end, and I kind of, shake myself out of my stupor. And I look, and one of the stylists is at the back of the store, of this, of the salon, holding a phone up and pointing at me, and looking kind of hostile and agitated. And just about that time, I there's a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and there's two Toronto police
Oh no.
standing behind me, going, "Hey, buddy, what do you think you're doing?" And I said, I just heard my song for the first time on the radio. They thought I was a wino or, a
Mm-hmm.
vagrant or something. And they just looked at me and went, "Oh, come on. Sure you did. Sure you did. Just tell your story walking."
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, they sort of threatened me, if either you're walking up the street or you're coming with us. So that was the first time I heard "Hit Me with Your Best Shot" on the radio.
How did that all come about? I mean, because like I said, everybody thinks, and that's the great mystique about being a songwriter is a lot of people don't look at those notes saying, "Oh, well, such and such wrote it." How did that all come about that Pat ended up singing your song?
Yeah, that's another interesting story. So I got after years of struggling and trying to get a foot in the door in the music business, and even harder in Canada than it is in the States. And of course, it's not easy anywhere. It's a tough grind. It was tough then, and it's even tougher now. But I finally got a publishing company called ATV interested in me, and their headquarters in North America were in Los Angeles. So I was flown to LA, and I had submitted 5 songs on a demo on cassette that they'd heard. And the vice president and the president sat me down when I got there, and I was completely green. I'd never been to LA before. This was like my big break in the music business. And they said, the first 4 songs on the tape are great, but that last one that you wrote, "Hit Me with Your Best Shot," that's very disappointing. It's probably the worst song we've ever heard.
That's a laugh, but
A- And and I like went, "Yeah, but I think that's my best song." And they went, "No, no, that's your worst song. Take it from us. We're professionals in the music business." So one of the reasons I was there was to demo um, my songs with, properly demo them. I did sort of little demos in Toronto, but they weren't up to LA spec. So we were going to re-record them to be pitched to artists, and possibly for me to do. At that time, I was also interested in being an artist myself. So there was some talk about, that recording for myself. At any rate, so they said, "Well, look, we'll do the first 4 songs. We'll do a demo, but that last song, no, never, not going to demo it." So to make a very long story short, because it took months of convincing, I think I was supposed to be there for a couple of weeks. I ended up just hanging out for way, way longer than I was supposed to be there, trying to convince them to let me do the demo. Finally, they relented just to get rid of me. And we did the demo. And I was excited because I finally thought, okay, this is great. It's demoed now. It'll get out there. People will hear it. And they called me into the office the day after we did the demo, and I did demo with some of Elton John's band. I mean, one of the guys in the band was a friend of mine from Toronto. So that was exciting. At any rate, they said, "Yeah, we still hate the song. We hate it even more, and we've erased it from the tape." So I'm sorry, this is a long story.
no,
I
it's
hope you don't
fine. You're
mind.
fine. No, I'm fascinated because it's just like I'm thinking. I'm in the back of my head. I'm like, I hope he had that minute when this song Pat picks a song, and you're just like, "See, I told you." But anyway,
Yeah, well, stay tuned. Anyway, so um, they erased it. I was really dejected and depressed, and I booked my flight. I just immediately booked a flight back to Toronto from LA. I was packing my bags. It was in the morning of the following day, packing my bags at the little apartment they put me up in. And I get a phone call out of the blue from the engineer on the recording session, a wonderful man by the name of John Reese, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. And he invited me to dinner, which was very unusual for the recording engineer to invite you to dinner. Went to dinner at his place up in the Hollywood Hills, and after a great dinner, because he was a Southern from Georgia, rural Georgia, made a great Southern style dinner for me, and took me aside, and he put something in my pocket of my shirt, and I pulled it out, and it was a cassette, and he said, "Look, ATV is my biggest client. I had to erase the tape because my gig is on the line. However, before I did, I made one copy of the song." And he said, "You can't play this for anybody now because they'll fire me if they know it exists. But go back to Canada, hang out. Maybe someday, sometime down the road, you'll know there's a right moment to play this for somebody." So I went back to Canada, kept writing songs. Months go by. Finally, I got a phone call from ATV, and I was, kind of depressed this whole time, but got a phone call from ATV. They'd hired a new guy in New York. His name was Marv Goodman, and he was working at Chrysalis Records, where Pat Benatar was signed, but he was going to move over to take over an ATV office in New York, a new office. And he said, I'm new here. I really like what you do. Have you got anything I haven't heard? And I
Yes.
said, yeah, I just happen to have one song that everybody hates in the company. Can I send it down to you? So I mailed down the one cassette that I had, that one version. And now the rest of it, I wasn't there. So, but the story that he told me was that he got the cassette and he was playing it in his office in Chrysalis, and he really liked the song and he kept playing it over and over again. And Pat Benatar was having a meeting in the office next door and heard it.
Nice.
And I guess the rest is history. So that's the wild and crazy story of how Hit Me got on that Pat Benatar record.
Well, and it's become such an iconic song. I mean, it's been, in movies and other people have done covers of it. So, you know, it's one of those and the think when you think about it, I mean, you never gave up on that. You always that was the one song you were just like, "Hey, this is gonna be this thing," and it's amazing because there's so many people that at times will sit there and say, "No, that's not good enough. That's not good enough." But sometimes when you believe in something enough, it ends up manifesting to, "Hey, look what I did." So did you ever have that moment of, "Hey, you were so wrong about that song,"
uh,
or just private
well,
satisfaction?
yeah, I think there's some private satisfaction, but there's a couple of things. One is the song itself is about an underdog being defiant in a situation. Now it's couched as a love, a relationship kind of thing. But it's equally applicable to the music business. If you think about who the tough cookie, and remember, up to that point, I couldn't get my foot in the door anywhere. So the song, in a way, sort of predicted its own success in the world. It's about not taking no for an answer, being defiant, being the underdog, but not giving in, not giving up. So there was that. Um, but to be honest with you, to this day, it's really hard to get your head around, and at least for me, uh, where the song went from there. I mean, it's a little hard uh, to for me to process, and yeah, it's been a lot of years. I'm still processing it. I mean, to be honest with you, I had all of these round, shiny round objects you see in a closet for the better part of 30 years because I just didn't want to. Yeah, I guess a little bit of denial about it. It's almost like you feel like it's like your success drinks you a little bit, and you're always as good as your next song and your next record. So yeah, I'm still trying to process it. And I mean, I've heard it in a cab in Paris, France. I've heard it, at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro in Japan. I've heard it in Home Depots and Targets and Walmarts, and it's
Yeah.
just it's kind of crazy. Like so, yeah, still working on that.
Hey, at least it's a better song than Sussudio. I mean, and I mean that Sussudio has meaning for me because it helped me win a trip to Live Aid, but that song, it was the most obnoxious song back in the day. I mean, yes, it had a nice, but it had no meaning. It had no meaning, but it was one of those songs that got a lot of play. One thing I wanted to go back to though is the fact that you were saying you put all the records, you didn't have all the gold disc up. And is that partially and not have being able to wrap your mind around it, is that for you I don't wanna use the term, but I'm going to, imposter syndrome, because you can't you can't you can't imagine that this is your life and this is and it goes back to saying, "My next record, can I put that out? My next song, is it gonna be as good?" And there's always that moment of pushing yourself. I mean, as an author, I do it. It's like, right now, I have a book out for early review, and I'm sitting here, the first moment I sent it, it was like, okay, am I gonna get slammed for this? Is this gonna be really bad? And so far, I've gotten 2 positive reviews, 2 very positive reviews, and it's like, okay. And even though I sit at decent reviews on all my other books, there's still that moment when you put that baby out, which could be a song, it could be anything, that you're like, "Okay, what if this blows up spectacularly in my face and I'm a fraud?"
Well, congratulations on having a new book and getting good reviews on it.
Thank you.
That's great. And I think you absolutely nailed it. I think that imposter syndrome is something that a lot of folks who've had some success, um, why me? Why did I get to do this and other people haven't? Um, so I think that's real, and I think I do suffer. I don't know if it's the right word to suffer, but I think I do have that syndrome as well, at least to some extent. I think COVID, interestingly enough, because now so many of the communications that I have with friends who are in the same business I am around the world, they've got all of their hardware on the wall. And because now Zoom, this kind of
Mhm.
teleconferencing is so prevalent. So they all had theirs up on the wall, and I finally said, well, they can do it, I should do it. So,
I can look
but
like,
yeah,
it gives you the visual credibility, at least for others to look at and go, "Wow, impressive." Kinda like when we opened up the podcast, it's like, "Well, okay." But I do know the truth that, the gold record is not really necessarily, I mean, we know the backstory now that they just take something, spray it, and it's not necessarily the actual record that you did. Somebody talked.
wait,
Yeah.
nobody.
Oh, you don't know this? Come on.
I know it. I'm just kidding.
I mean, but that's the thing, and to go to your point about, why me? Okay, I'll be a fangirl for a second. So there's a band that I've met several times, and if I post a picture of me with the bass player or the drummer or whatever, I'll have other fans going, "Oh my god, you're so lucky. I don't know how do you manage to do that." I've met these people over and over again. I think it has something to do with the fact that you have to be tenacious. You have to have a little bit of spark to say, "Okay, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do." Set a goal and make it happen. Even if it's against odds, even if it's against odds, if you still keep going and still push yourself, you can make it happen.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, the secret to a lot of this stuff is not taking no for an answer. And but also, everybody that I know that I respect that's really, writes great songs, um, it's always about the trying. It's always about the struggle to make whatever you do better. So they're never self-satisfied. They're never pounding their chest about how great they are. They're always saying, my next song is going to be better than my last song. My next record is going to be better than my last record. It's always about the journey. And um, and there are always people that are better than you to emulate, and there are always, going to be people who look up to you, like think, you're the guy or the gal. So it's interesting, right? But I think that um, just never being self-satisfied, never thinking that you've made it is really an important part of being creative and sticking with it. And yeah, and other people are going to have their opinions, and it's amazing how many people told me I'll never make a living in the music business, including my publisher, or at least, well,
Yeah.
sort of, but you know what I mean. But including my parents, my mother. I mean, just what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? So. I guess you just have to have that stubborn streak in you, and just keep going.
Well, and it's very hard because you talked about being depressed when you came back from LA, and that's the thing. It's like if you have a choice, you can continue to go or you can just wallow in the depression and not allow yourself to be creative and not allow yourself to keep going and push through. Y- This summer I went through chemo. And, I will touch on this because of the fact that I know what led you to your new record. But we're in such a very diverse, sad, hard time right now. And there's those moments of, do I keep going? And going through chemo, there was those days where it was like, okay, I'm going to beat cancer, but why? Because if you give up hope, and not even this with when you're a creative, if you decide I am not creative, I'm just going to give up and just work a 9 to 5 or whatever and just go on with life. The fact is, you give up hope, and you have to have hope to keep going. No matter if you're creative, no matter just living, you have to have that hope. And my dad used to play organ all the time, and he recently said to me, "I'm not creative." And I said to him, because we text, he can't hear. And I said to him, I said, Dad, you used to play the organ. That's being creative. But
Hmm.
because we have these narrow parameters of what creative is, and he was an auto mechanic that used to work on Ferraris and everything, and he had to learn, and it's like even that, even though that's mechanical and technical, there's still a creative avenue if you have to figure those things out. But
Yeah.
we limit creativity to music, acting, painting, writing, but creativity can come in so many different ways. And the fact of the matter is, in order to keep going, that's why I think you're still stayed in the business. Because I'm sure when you gave up hope, if when you were depressed, if you would have just walked away and said, I'm done, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. And you know, the other thing is about it. Well, first of all, it's great that you seem to be in good shape now. So congratulations on getting through that.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that can't be easy. Um, a song I wrote 3 years ago might have a life 5 years from now. It's also a very strange way to make a living in that. And I think that's part of why when I was that story, to come back to that just briefly, when I heard that the Benatar version of Hit Me coming out of that, hair salon, um, I was so interested in shock because it was 1980. I wrote the song in 1978. I was 2 years and God knows how many songs down the road
Hmm.
from Hit Me With Your Best Shot. So, you know what I mean? It's talk about delayed gratification. It's
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of that in the arts, and but I love your point about being creative. I really do. And my father was a pharmacist. He wasn't particularly happy in that gig. He worked long hours, and back in the day, little neighborhood pharmacy, didn't make a lot of money. But my parents had scraped together some money for a piano for my sister. And my father would come home from work, he'd be exhausted, but he would sit down at that piano and he would pick out, and he was really good at it. He would pick out a song from Broadway or something my mother liked to sing, and he'd just sit down there for an hour, and peck out a melody, sort of like your father on the organ, and that was inspirational to me. And yeah, that was it's wonderful. There's a lot to be said for learning how to play a musical instrument in terms of your mental health.
Hmm. Well, I think, when you're talking about that, the bigger aspect is if you are constantly working 9 to 5 and you have all these stresses and you're not doing anything creative, we all need a creative outlet. And education doesn't focus on that anymore. They don't care about the arts. But the fact is, we that's one of the biggest stress relievers you have. I mean, when I was going through chemo and I was at my lowest point where I didn't have any energy, the only thing I could do, and I know that sounds crazy to some, is I sat down and wrote. But here's the
Mm.
thing, the writing for me is an escape mechanism because I write like I was taught how to act. You have to live in that moment. So I'm not that girl who is sitting here dealing with the ramifications of chemo. I am that person I am writing about. And so I think and even like writing a song, you can get lost in that whole process for yourself. You can get lost and taken to another world of melodies. And that's what brings us to film school because you wanted to check out of what was going on in the world, right?
Well, I certainly wanted to um, find a way to survive it.
Hmm.
It's so hard to check out now because, every day feels like, the next level of chaos,
Hmm.
to say the least, if not worse.
Hmm.
Um, it's so, and so, yeah, I mean, I think defiance is kind of a theme in a lot of the things I've written. And I think film school is in there too, and We Win, which is the first single, is, was a way, my way of finding a way to begin to cope and to, um, well, I'll use the word process again, just process what might get me through this strange and disturbing time we live in. So, and the song, the answer is in the song. And I think the thing is when there's a lot of hate and a lot of anger and a lot of hostility in the air, it turns out that love is a type of defiance. It's a type of way of pushing back, saying, no, this is what's important. And so yeah, that's all baked into the journey to write We Win and to do film school.
It's interesting because as you were talking, the image that came to mind is something from the '70s, and I'm not sure if you had the same ad in Canada or not, but Coca-Cola did an ad of, the "I like to teach the world to sing," and it was a whole chain of people holding hands of all generations, nationalities, every it was just everybody coming together, and I look at that, and, I was a kid, but I look at that and think, how powerful a thing that is,
Mm.
and now we have the people that are behind the screens that aren't even sometimes real people because 'cause they're bots or whatever, driving a divide, and why? Why do we have to be divided? Why the hate?
Well, yeah, apparently it works for some people
Mhm.
some of the time, and it works much better than I would have ever hoped. So, just an aside on what you just said, not only did we have that in Canada, but I studied music at a school in Canada called York, in Toronto, called York University. And one of my professors was the guy who wrote that song.
Okay.
So, so yeah, I feel a little connection there for sure. And he didn't have to teach because he did very well. For that was a huge,
I can imagine.
like you said, that was yeah, like a generational touchstone almost musically. Um, yeah, what's the answer? I mean, it's always hate this yin and yang battle between, I think, love and hate have they've been with us from time immemorial, and clearly they're still with us, and it's a shame. And um, I think a lot of my life, I have felt like, caring and love and that connection between people has had its great champions as presidents of the United States. I mean, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole in terms of politics, but we've had many presidents who championed, I think, the side of light and tolerance and unity and, bending the arc of history towards justice. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. But like you said, we just have to find a way to get through this. Um, and again, I think, film school was my new EP film school was really, uh, my way of hopefully starting down that road.
And it's important because, I mean, there's there's such stress now all over the place, and I'm glad that you were able to go into the studio and be creative and find something that's going to, I wanna say, help maybe inspire somebody, maybe give them solace, and being able to do that not only for yourself, but for somebody else that may be listening to it, that's a big deal. And
Mm,
going back to the imposter syndrome, it's like I don't think sometimes when we create things that we realize what we're doing, because we may never actually know from that one person how that may play out. There's a When my husband passed, there was 2 songs. I got in my car, I had never it was one of my favorite band's records, but I did not like the songs. I didn't like the record. I didn't listen to it, but it was on my iPod anyway. And I got in the car and I put the song on, and the song is talking about a man facing the wall of death, doing a death spiral, basically. I had just taken my husband off life support, and this comes on, and I'm like, "Okay, so the universe is providing me with this song." And then there was a song right after called, "Face the Universe Alone." And yeah, so it was just like, and it came on randomly, and it was just like, "Okay." I sat in the parking lot and I bawled my eyes out, but at that time, and that's why I'm saying, you don't know as a musician or as a creative person when that song may hit somebody, and you may never know.
mm,
That song may resonate so hard and may give somebody hope. It may give them the solace. It may actually help them heal. So, writing the songs that you do, I mean, Special Girl, they all had when I was listening to them, they all had something to me, and, like, You Don't Belong, and granted, it wasn't exactly all the lyrics, but just the title and listening to the statement of "You don't belong." There's so many times in our life where we want to belong to something, yet we feel isolated. And right now is that
Mm.
time. We feel very isolated, a lot of us. So,
Yeah, that song in particular, definitely. I mean, the whole, the six songs are all, I think, pretty topical in
mhm.
their own way. Um, and You Don't Belong definitely, I think, speaks to what you're talking about right now, and it's a feeling of alienation, and I won't get into it in too much depth, um, but yeah, there's again, there's some defiance in it, and I think defiance, whether I like it or not, it seems to be a bit of a theme that I come back to. I wrote a song called "Don't Shed a Tear," also kind of a defiant song. Paul Carrick did a tremendous job recording that and singing it. Um, so, and again, like I said, love in a time of hate's defiance. I mean, you find your way of surviving and being defiant against the powers that be, um, and also this, like you said, we're not united as a nation right now. We're not united as a world, and You Don't Belong definitely comes out of that feeling of being alienated um, and acknowledging it. That's let's not mince words here. We're not on the same page.
Well, and that's the thing. We have to acknowledge where we're at. We have a lot of people that are still, dare I say, driving around with their, there's a great example because I worked in insurance and there was this woman. I'm taking a recorded statement. I'm like, so how'd the accident happen? And she's like, well, anytime my son is scared, I tell him to put his hands over his eyes. Okay, so she tells me this and she says, I said, well, what could you have done to avoid it? Well, what happened was I'm driving, I saw the car coming toward us. Now, what would a logical person do? They would turn the wheel. They would try to get out of the way. What did she do? I put my hands over my face and then we collided. And I think in a lot of aspects now, there's a lot of people still putting their hands over their eyes, fingers in their ear, and going la la la. And granted, I tune out of social media. I check the news once or twice a day because for my own mental health, I can't constantly focus on this. But I'm not. I know where we're at, and I'm not sitting there putting my hands over my face. I'm not worried about the Kardashians or whoever because there are real situations here that we need to face. Because even
There are real.
oh, sorry. Because
No, no, go ahead.
even what I can say here now, I'm scared to say because I could go to jail. So, anyway,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that what you just said is that's a heck of a statement, that we can have a conversation about, music and songs and art, and yeah, people like us who have these kind of conversations end up, on a plane flying to, some undeveloped country somewhere, and God knows what's going to happen to them. So, I mean, maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe that's just the news. I like to think, and I think there's reason to believe that the news does focus on the worst stuff. So it kind of throws fuel on the fire. But there's a lot of stuff going on right now that's deeply, deeply troubling. And, but there is some pushback too. We're seeing some, I'm thinking about Jimmy Kimmel and the fact that, he's back. So, um, again, little signs of hope. Maybe not so little. We'll see.
but
I
that's
hope.
well, this is exactly true. I mean, the Kimmel thing was a big thing because what was being what was being said that he allegedly said and looking at the actual tape, he didn't say anything that they were alleging that he said. They were
No, of
saying
course not.
and that's the thing, between the media at a certain point, and you know this, and I can talk about the media without getting in trouble. The media, we used to have the fairness doctrine. We used to have parameters in there where like Walter Cronkite or yeah, and Dan Rather, they would sit there and tell us the news. They would be honest about well, as honest as they could be, but they would be fair for the most part and unbiased in what they were telling us. It wasn't infotainment. It wasn't about ratings, it was about, "Here are the facts." And somehow, after cable news and everything else, it became all infotainment. I
Mm.
mean, and we used to have the warning of, "Please, if you have small children or sensitive people, please have them leave the room before you watch this." Oh, now I can open my phone and watch somebody get blown away. No warning, here you go. So, I think we've evolved, yes, but then I think we have devolved in a lot of ways.
Well, I think uh, big tech. I just have to say this. I think big technology companies have a lot to answer for because they have created what you're talking about, where there are no guardrails, and the most crackpot theories now can have the same credibility and get even more attention than the truth.
Mhm,
So and given there are truths, it's not, there are multiple valid points of view that are worth discussing, but it's the fact that they exploit the algorithms, which aren't even people, exploit our differences to accentuate them and to keep people engaged. It's a very dangerous game,
mhm.
and I realize it's making some people very, very, very wealthy. And now we're faced with generative AI, which is um, just for everybody, that is not how I generated the scene behind me. I just want you to know that. Um, but generative AI, that's pretty terrifying to people like me who, and to you too, as a writer of books. I mean, they've ingested our work, these machines, and they're spitting out, prefabricated facsimiles of real music and real books. And again, I'm not saying there isn't a place for them. I'm not afraid of technology. I've used technology my whole life in the music business, but um, you need guardrails. You need something to make sure that human beings are protected, that we have rights, and protections vested in us, and that we can say no to some of these things. We can be defiant, to come back to that word, against these, huge, immensely wealthy handful of companies now that control so much of our lives. Um, and the government, since we're talking about politics, I mean, the government does have a role to play here, and that they're definitely MIA at the moment.
Totally at the moment. I mean, over here, it's shut down, but the
Yeah, well, that's
yeah.
good point.
But the thing is, and I'm not defending AI in the least because there's a bigger thing that nobody really thinks about. AI here, it's like, oh well, it's just affecting the creatives. Well, no, because it can start doing accounting. I mean, we had a program. This was back in I think 2000. We had a program at the insurance company for left turn accidents. You were supposed to follow the prompts, and it wasn't completely good. It wasn't completely real. They didn't have all the scenarios. But we were supposed to use that, and it was supposed to determine liability. We were already taking the human aspect out of it.
Mm,
But so it can it's eventually, if this continues, it's going to affect things. However, there are reports now stating that like Spotify has removed a lot of AI artists. There's the backlash about the AI actress. There's a settlement going around for all the authors who had their books scraped to be taught. But then you also have to look at there was a study recently about cancer doctors. They had them review medical things. They were having them review reports and everything. And then they had the AI assist them. AI, what they've realized was that AI ends up taking all your normal processes, your normal thoughts of everything. Because after the guys used AI and then came back, they weren't recognizing as many cancer problems. They had kind of quit recognizing that. So the normal things that you learned, AI, once you're not using them anymore, they go away.
right,
So, and it
right,
affects your brain. But then you also, besides, so the human brain has the problem. Besides that, then you have the electricity and the water that these data centers use. So, other than these people making tons of money because it's not going to give you a lot of jobs, what is it really doing?
Well, I don't know that there's a shortage of music in the world,
Mhm.
so I don't know. I mean, that's the thing is, uh, when did we ask for, I think 30% of Deezer is, and it's tens of thousands of songs every day is being completely Gen AI generated. Um, what do we need that for? What do
Yeah.
you what do- how about just one new song that breaks new ground and is really great and um yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, so they're selling us something that I don't think we need. Um, technology should be there to help. It's very valuable, as we know, to help human beings. But with generative AI, it's not there to help human beings. It's there to make. It's just strictly there to make a lot of money, as I said, for certain
Hmm.
huge, already huge and powerful technology companies. And what should be what should help us on the human journey, if you will, now seems to have become the destination.
Yeah.
And technology shouldn't be the destination. It should just be something that helps us do what we do as people. So, and your environmental comments, of course, are extremely appropriate and yeah, terrifying. And they're building more and more of these massive data centers that use more
Hmm.
electricity than cities do. I mean, it seems like out of control
And
and madness.
and instead of the companies paying for the damage or the use of the electricity, it's going to the normal consumer. To be fair, there's something I want to say. There was a girl I interviewed, a woman that I interviewed on the show that it never aired and it will not air. She was telling me when I booked her, they were like, "Oh, well, she can play all these instruments, blah blah blah, on and on and on." Okay. So I started doing the interview, and it turns out how she was saying she was proficient in all these instruments is because she changed the setting on her keyboard.
Hmm.
And so when you look at that and then you look at AI, oh, well, I'm a songwriter. No, well, you have this. And there's a backlash for authors now because there's readers that are like, oh my gosh, somebody, this is an AI book because the character patted across the floor or the character ran its hand through its hair. That has to be AI generated. Well, firstly, that's a normal human thing. Secondly, AI learned how to write from humans, from all the books
Yeah.
it scraped. So, and that's where it gets weird because people want to scream AI, and unless somebody's got 3 fingers or 6 fingers or looks really off in a picture, it's harder to tell than you think in some cases. Some cases it's blatant, but not all.
And it's going to get harder and harder. But I do want to emphasize that film school is 100% human generated. So just in case anybody was wondering, you mentioned the settlement from the book authors of books, and it's certainly better than nothing. But you have to ask yourself if they've ingested the life's work of an author and they're getting $3,000,
Mhm,
a one-time payment of
mhm,
$3,000. So in most cities in America these days, what is that, rent for 1 month or something like that? Maybe
yeah,
not even. So um, great that there's some money coming the way to those authors whose works were against their will used to train generative AI. But yeah, that's not exactly gonna save
no.
their livelihood going forward, and that's again troubling.
Well, it's kinda like the whole when Napster was a big deal because what happens now is authors put a book out, and then somebody will put it on a pirate site, and sometimes the amusing thing about pirate sites is I actually had put a book up on Goodreads that I had not finished writing, and the pirate site was alleging that they had that book, which was a credit card scam because some of these pirate sites, they actually have credit card they want your credit card. And
Hmm.
so, of course, then as the author, I had to send a cease and desist, but my husband had a good laugh. He's like, "Well, I guess you arrived. They're pirating your books." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not even a real book." So, I think that's there's so many things now because of tech. You wouldn't have to worry about a book getting pirated back in the '80s. You wouldn't have to worry about it. Well, we would record songs off the radio, yeah, the cassette player. But it's still you had to worry about the disc jockey talking over it. There was not the it wasn't gonna be something in pure form. And so now it's like everything has changed. It's gotta be harder for you as a musician to even think about getting a record deal because there's so many people out there, and do you really wanna lock yourself down in a record deal, or do you want to continue and do stuff on your own?
Well, the good news is there's more resources for independent, music
Mhm.
creators now than there ever have been before. The bad news is that unless you get a billion streams, um, you're not going to be making any money. I mean, it's a sad situation. You get a million streams, you get enough to maybe buy a pizza. These things behind me on the wall were for a million sales, or or five. Gold was 500,000, platinum was a million, and then there was multi-platinum. But um, I realized that streaming is not, it's not a direct apples to apples comparison. But an album was what, $20, anywhere between 12 and $20, depending on whatever. And so I mean, back in the day, I got for every Hit Me With Your Best Shot copy of that sold, um, I got 4 cents. Doesn't sound like a lot of money. It's like huge compared to what Spotify pays now.
Oh, yeah.
The Spotify pays 0.00004 or something like that. So um, yeah, so there's more resources, there's more outlets for your work if you're a human creator, but very, very hard to make a living. So much harder now than it was. And it's always been hard, but now it's almost impossible.
It's the same thing with Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited, it's like point zero zero. It's the same kind of math for page reads. And putting out this new book, usually I buy my own ISBNs. This time I didn't have the finances to do it, so I was gonna go ahead and use one of Amazon's ISBNs. So when I put it in, usually I'll make $2 a paperback, which is fine. That's a decent price. I mean, I understand there's cost. Printing cost is like 5 something. Okay, fine, and they need a little profit, fine. Using their ISBN, I was gonna get 22 cents per book.
Forgive me, but what is an ISPN?
An ISBN is the
A
number.
BN, sorry.
Yeah, it's a catalog number. It's a catalog number
Ah,
for a book. So, I have my own print or publishing company that I buy, ISBNs under. And to use Amazon's, yes, it's free, but you're gonna see a lot less return for using somebody else's number.
no.
So it's just like 22 cents a book. I make more selling my ebook at 99 cents. I make 33 cents than if so why would I put it in print if I'm going to make even less?
Good question.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very hard. And yeah, again, well, Jeff Bezos wants to go to Mars,
Yeah.
and
Well,
you're just lucky you're helping him, finance the journey.
yes,
So
yes.
maybe he'll hook up with Elon Musk there, and they can stay there.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I don't understand. You want to go, then go. Just go. I don't care. Just pack your bags, go.
Yeah.
And instead of taking their money and actually making this place a better place. No, we're going to go off and do whatever. Okay, you do that. You go and do that. And that's the sad thing. I mean, I've talked about this before with other people, my friends, in fact. It's like all the diverse divisiveness that we have. The biggest question, and you nailed it earlier, is where follow the money. Why are we at this point? You have to follow the money. And where does the money lead? It leads to big tech. I mean, when you got somebody that has 50 cell phones acting like chats or chat bots, making comments on posts, there's got to be a way to stop this stuff. And I look at a movie a long time ago, and it's something you were saying about, it's only going to get worse with AI. There was a movie called Wag the Dog, and it was about basically creating that fake war. And the thing is, now with AI, we can make that stuff so much easier.
Hmm.
So when do we actually look and go, okay, enough is enough, and we need to actually see what's going on in the world and really know the truth? And are we ever going to really know the truth as long as we have the tech companies navigating?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty scary stuff, and I don't think we really have the answers, and we certainly can't look to the authorities these days for the answers. So, I mean, there may be in other parts of the world, they'll, I know Europe, there's, maybe a little better. Maybe the governments there will be helpful. I don't know. It's really
I'm not sure.
it's troubling, but that's why, music, we can still be creative. We can still write books. We can still be creative, and we can still hold our loved ones dear to us and near to us, and just try to get on with life and not give up.
Well, I don't know if it was Sweden or Denmark that basically said, here, everybody owns their own image, everybody owns their voice. You cannot use AI to manipulate. And I think that's what we need to do across the world. But I want to diverse off of that because I do have a question. So, besides the Pat Benatar thing, out of this, all the songs you've written, what is the song that has meant the biggest thing to you? I mean, out of everybody that sang some of your songs, what is the biggest moment that you were just like, and I know you say you still haven't wrapped your head around it, but there's got to be still a moment when you hear somebody did your song. I mean, I know you get a call and say, okay, somebody's working on your song, right? Or do you just not know?
A lot of times you don't know. The songwriter is usually the last to get paid and the last to know what's going on. Um, I mean, listen, I've been so fortunate, Donna. I mean, Joe Cocker doing three of my songs. Joe Cocker was, a giant to me. Paul Carrick doing a couple of my songs. And, his biggest hit was a song I wrote called Don't Shed a Tear, which I think I mentioned earlier. Um, so many incredible artists. The Rascal Flatts guys, I guess over here you can see one of the things I got from them. Such nice people. And Joe was such a nice, I had a chance to work with Joe a little bit and meet him a couple of times. Such a gentleman, such a wonderful human being. And so it's a tough one. I mean, I think right now at this point in my life, having had all those incredible people do my songs, uh, over the years, and there are many other artists I'm leaving out that were amazing, and that I have a lot of gratitude for them doing my songs. I just feel very good about the fact that I can do my own stuff. When I was able to do We Win again, the economics of it certainly a lot cheaper to record now because you can do so much on a laptop. So there's where technology has been very helpful.
Mhm.
Um, so back in the day, it would cost a fortune to go into a studio and record. Now you can do it, like I said, on a laptop or a computer in your house, and it sounds good. It's very good. So yeah, like recording film school, We Win, Special Girl, which you mentioned. I mean, all these songs. I guess I'm using this as a bit of a platform to talk about that, but right now that's again, it's being able to write those songs and sing them that is keeping me going right now. And it's really very hard to get outside covers. When someone else does your songs, it's called a cover. And that also is much harder now. There are very few artists that will do outside songs. So that's the bad news. You can't just sit at home and send songs out and have people do them and make a living. At least if it was hard then, it's 1,000 times harder now. But because of the technology, I can sing my own songs and get to talk to people like you and put them out. And it's not going to be on the scale that that the major labels can operate at. I don't have that kind of power, and then I can't make those kinds of investments they would make. Um, but it's very satisfying, and if you can touch something you said earlier, if you can touch just a few people, if it helps a few people, something like We Win, and I've had people who've heard it and said, it just meant a lot to them right now to hear that song and really helped them a lot. I mean, that just makes it all worthwhile. So,
And I think that's the one thing as a creative, and that's what I've said because I teach an author class, or I did. And the thing is, I tell the people that take it, I'm like, if you're doing this because you think you're going to be a bestseller, You're going to make tons of cash. Don't do it for that.
Mm.
Do it because you love it. It's the same thing I told my stepdaughter. She was no longer my stepdaughter technically, but her dad bought her a bass guitar, and she was just like, "Yeah, I'm going to be a bassist." Da da da. Well, I was had that same dream. I did, and so I sat down with her, and I'm like, "Do you love playing music?" No, I just want to be in a band. Da da da. I'm like, but is it because of the music or is it because you want fame? And she didn't play the guitar, and I think
If
that's the bigger
you,
thing.
I
But
think that is so true and such. I mean, what I say to young people who are ambitious in the music world, this better be the only thing you can do. Like you cannot stop doing it because you love it so much and you're prepared to devote your life to it. Because if there's any other way for you to make a living, my advice is do that. You have to do this because you just can't do anything else. You're that driven. So it's a very
mhm.
similar advice to what you're giving your students. And
You have to be passionate about it. It has to be a passion, and you know when it's a passion because if you don't like for me, if I don't write for a couple of days, it bothers me. I know it bothers me. And so I know that this is something and even my friends have told me, when you start talking about your writing, you light up. There's this shift in your personality. And I think if anybody, and it doesn't, I mean, if you're passionate about accounting, then go for it. But whatever your passion is, that's going to make your life so much better. And it doesn't, some people are like, well, passion's all about, it doesn't have to be about sex. Passion is what drives you. And if being creative and making music or drawing or like I said, accounting, if that's something you're passionate about it, then do it. Because that's going to take some of this nasty crap that we're dealing with and make life that much better.
yep. And believe in yourself.
Hmm.
Believe in you because your faith in yourself will be tested.
Yes.
So just know that's coming. So so try to gauge whether you've got that kind of determination and faith in yourself to get through things. Because again, there are easier ways to make a living. I never thought I would be sitting here with the hardware behind me, and I never thought I'd make a living. I had a girlfriend who was in advertising and she was doing pretty well. And I figured, she'll just support me for the rest of my life. As it turned out, she's been my wife now of many, many, many years, and it worked out a little differently than I expected. But she's not complaining. I'll just put it that way.
Well, that's good. But
Yeah.
and the thing is also, you said something earlier too. As much as you have that slight imposter syndrome that I got to make that next single good, I think if you get to a point where you're like, hey, yeah, I'm golden, I can write a hit, I can do this, that's where the flaw happens. That's where the downfall happens because you lose your vulnerability and your honesty
Mm,
because then you think that I am the end all be all, and that sometimes can be a trap.
totally. I mean, and I think something that's sort of you know, related to what you were saying to your students is you can't do this for the money. Don't, I mean, look, I guess there are authors who can do it for the money and do it just for the money. But um, in my experiences, if you really want to be a writer or a songwriter or be creative, if it's money that motivates you, you're never going to get to where you need to go. It's got to be about the art, about the craft, and about making it as right as you can make it, and never stop trying. Never give up. Never think you've made you're in the winner's circle. You're always as good as your next song or
Because
your next book.
let's be honest, there's always somebody there waiting in the wings to take your place.
Yeah, and the other thing is I know like my daughter's a visual artist and she's I'm really very proud of her. She's doing quite well right now, and she some of the kids she came out of art school with were doing much much better right out of school and selling paintings for a lot of money in prestigious art galleries. And I just had to say never compare yourself in the arts to anybody else. You can never do that because that's again that's you're unique. Their journey and your journey will be different. It's not like, to use your accountant or
Mhm.
being a lawyer. You don't go to school, then you don't get a job at a certain law firm, and then work your way up until you get to a prestigious, you know, New York law firm or whatever. That's not the way this being in the arts works. So it's just be true to yourself and do the best you can.
Very true. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to add?
I just wanted to ask you what your favorite. I mean, I really appreciate you listening to film school, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am curious to know what your favorite song was on it, and if I am putting you on the spot,
You are, but that's okay.
please. Okay.
I mean, I did like "We Win." I think it's a very powerful song, and I think that, I feel like it gives hope, and that's something that we all need right now. The album overall was very nice, it was relaxing, it was something that it I don't wanna say emotional, but there was emotion in it, and it's like, I could enjoy it, I there wasn't high pressure to it, it was a good thing, it was a good record, and so, I'm glad I got to listen to it, so
Well, thank you, and I apologize. I did put you on the
it's
spot there,
okay,
so I'm
it's
sorry.
alright. I put people on the spot all the time, but I thank you, Eddie, for coming on.
Thank you, Donna, for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Eddie and I had I think, it's an important conversation because it also talks about the fact that creativity is such a powerful thing and we don't always see the bigger picture of it. And I think we have to be able to look at what our passion is, I don't want to say desire, but what is our passion? What makes us think, okay, I can do this. I can keep going. I have to push through and I can make this a reality. The first time I sat down and wrote a book, a real book, and I had it in my hand that moment afterwards. I was like, wow. But if I go back to being in high school and writing, and yes, it would be deemed fan fiction now. But I think about writing, and then I started another book after high school, and then I started another book after that. That's the 30-year novel in the bin. But when I look at those things, it's like those are those moments where it's like I kept going and I realized that I liked writing and I enjoyed writing. And then in 2010, one of my friends, she was part of an anthology and they were looking for vampire stories. And I was like, I went in the kitchen and I looked at my husband. I'm like, oh, they're looking for vampire stories. You know what? I'm going to do that. And you know what? I'm going to win one of the competitions because there was 4 competitions. I was like, I'm going to do this. I know I'm going to do it. I went in my office, sat down, and in 2 hours I wrote the story. I had it all fleshed out, which is actually going to be re-released. Actually, it already is re-released because by the time this airs, it'll be over because it's being released in October. Um, but I sat there and was like, I'm doing this. I can do this. And sure enough, I did win the award. And I put another story in there too. It didn't do as well, but I did it. I won the award. I knew what I was doing. But I didn't take that confidence and say, okay, I'm going to do it. Life happened, things shifted, and I kept writing. I kept writing through all this time since high school till now. And then, you know, and I've talked about this when it came down to 2019 and being told that I have a shot at signing at Barnes and Noble, but I have to have this done by then. Okay, I have a time frame. Or the fact that, hey, there's a contest. You can get a book written. We can put it in the contest. You have a choice. And I did. I didn't put it in the contest. We've talked about that before too. But the fact of the matter is, you have to have that passion, that drive that's going to motivate you because it's up to you to keep going. Nobody's going to sit there and say, oh, you want to be an author? Oh, you want to write a book? That's great. I'm happy for you. But if all you say is, I want to write a song, I want to be an artist. But if you never pick up that paintbrush or you never write down that note, or if you never pick up an instrument or even write down what you have as lyrics, if you never take those steps, you're never going to get there. So you need to step up to the plate and you always have to be worried about, so is this next one okay or did I screw up? Because there's something else that I guess that we really didn't talk about for the creative, and that's vulnerability. Because every time you put something out, you're putting yourself out there, and there's a vulnerable moment of, is this going to be received well? But the key to that you have to realize is that not everybody is going to like what you do. Some people will love it, Some people will hate it, but you have to respect it. I think you should check out Film School by Eddie. It'll give you some hope, and I think in this day and time, we need that hope. We all need that hope to keep going. And well, as always, I'd like to thank you guys. I'd like to thank Fast Susie for tuning in. I'd like to thank Eddie for coming on. And well, I'd like to thank you guys because really, why do I do this? So somebody will listen to this. I don't care if it's a handful of people, because guess what? I've learned that this show is one of my passions. I enjoy it. And being able to talk to somebody and all the people that I've talked to has been a wild ride, and I enjoy it. So it's a passion. And I hope that comes through. And it makes me happy when I see that I have somebody actually listening. I don't have huge numbers, and it doesn't matter because I have you and you guys, the people that have stuck with the show since the beginning and the people that have joined recently. I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I want you to have a great day whenever you're listening, morning, noon, or night. And as always, I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye.